What if the most painful part of Alzheimer's isn't the diagnosis itself, but the silence that surrounds it? So many families notice changes years before anyone can name them. They question themselves, they minimize it, they wait. But then when the diagnosis finally comes, they feel completely alone. So today's conversation is about breaking that silence. Welcome back again. And if you're new here, I am Rosabel Sofil, a nurse practitioner, caregiver advocate, and someone who is deeply committed to changing how we talk about dementia in caregiving. Today, I'm joined by Eduardo Berdegué, principal of Divine Home Care Services. Eduardo operates Divine Home Care Services as an independent home care agency that serves older adults across Central Texas. And Eduardo, I want to know your story because you have had a successful career prior to that in investment banking. You help business owners and corporations worldwide navigate major transitions. But over time, your work shifted towards something deeply personal and deeply needed, and that is supporting families affected by Alzheimer's and other type of dementias. Eduardo, tell me more about your story.
All right. Well, thank you, first of all, Rosabel, for inviting me to your podcast. It's great to hear you give that introduction and talk about the importance of breaking barriers when it comes to talking about dementia, talking about Alzheimer's, things that, as you know, and your listeners know, have until not too long ago been sort of taboos. So happy to have this conversation with you. My story is I am originally from Bolivia in South America, where I was born and grew up. Came to do my schooling here. My college years were in the US, both as an undergraduate and as graduate studies. I met my now wife for 38 years in Bolivia. She had been living in San Antonio, Texas for pretty much all her life. Parents of her are from Bolivia as well. So we met there, got married, and left the country to do a number of things. Went back, started having a family. And then at some point, we moved back to Texas. This was back in 2002. At the time, I was head of a multimedia group, a television network, which was acting as the holding company of a multimedia group there. Things in Bolivia were politically, socially, and economically uh, hectic. The world was living the dot-com boom, which attracted us. We came to the US early 2000s and lived in San Antonio for close to 20 years. Our kids, three children, grew up there and started leaving the house. Yes, it was time for them to go to college. At some point back in 2018 or so, we became empty nesters. And we knew that when that time would come, Claudia, my wife, and I wanted to find something that we could do together. She had a banking career and then established a contracting business with her civil engineer brother. I had a practice of investment banking where I would help individuals and corporations either buy or sell businesses. That also gave me the training and experience to see that maybe buying a business would be that next step when the time would come. And the time came when we became empty nesters. And as I said, we wanted to do something together. We wanted to find a business that we could run and grow together. But more importantly, a business that would have a sense of purpose, of mission, something that we would feel good at running the business and developing it. We did not know of the home care space per se. I mean, one hears about it but doesn't really register. So we were not looking specifically for home care, nor were we looking specifically for this Central Texas Waco area. We knew we wanted to remain in Texas. And somehow we came across Divine Home Care, the founder and owner of which was in the process of selling the business. We met with her, we liked everything she said. We were, through her and through this initial experience, introduced a little more in depth to the world of home care for seniors and the elderly. We immediately realized that this was it. This was the activity, the business, the experience that we were looking for. We checked the boxes. So, to make a long story short, this was back in early 2019. We ended up buying the business and moving from San Antonio to Waco, where we now live since then, last 6.5 years. The Divine Home Care has been a tremendous experience in every sense, but one that from the beginning turned out to be a very humbling experience, dealing with not just the elderly on the client side, but also dealing with the caregivers and the world of those people that are committed to taking care of those clients and their own stories and their own experiences. So, on both ends, the experience turned out to be very humbling and rewarding in every sense.
Wow, that's amazing. Eduardo, and you work with caregivers of all spectrum, not just for caregivers of dementia. It's patients, throughout the whole spectrum, right?
That is correct. Our business is licensed by the Texas Health and Human Services to provide non medical personal assistance services, which includes bathing, grooming, transferring, meal preparation, a lot of Alzheimer's care, incontinence care, light housekeeping, companionship, those types of things.
Perfect. And as you know, and many of my audience knows, I specialize in memory care. So we chose to speak about dementia in general because I understand you also are the co-founder, right, of the Alzheimer's Expo community center events that are designed to bring education, resources, and connection to families that navigate particularly Alzheimer's disease, right?
Correct. As I was saying, our initial experience turned out to be humbling, and we were discovering a world of elderly caregiving demands for cares, requirements, issues, absences, gaps, needs, all those types of things. And in that process, we, of course, started coming across more and more with clients and families that were affected by Alzheimer's. We
Absolutely.
realized that it wasn't just the client that was affected, but the family. So this was and at the same time, we also realized that while there was such a hunger for information, for resources, for knowing more about how to travel this journey, there was little in the sense of structured events, programs. So, there were things here and there were resources that one could find here and there. And so basically, we came up with the idea of starting this event called the Alzheimer's Expo, which is an event of Divine Home Care, the organization of which gathers additional entities that are part of a planning and organizing committee. Bottom line, the Alzheimer's Expo was started back in 2022, I believe, the first one. We've had one in Bosque County, of them in McLennan County here in Waco. And we're very excited and proud to say that we are starting our first Bell County Alzheimer's Expo next March. You are invited and you will be part of it. And we're excited and grateful for that too. The Expo is an event that has the aim, the goal of gathering as many resources available in a community for those affected by the disease, by this growing disease. And so under the same roof in this case, in Belton on March 4th, from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., we will have a program that has 5 pillars. One is a resource exhibit, where we will have, I believe, some 30 by invitation only vendors that offer relevant products, services, counseling, whatever to that community. We will have 4 one-on-one consultation stations where attendees will be able to go and visit with a nurse, an attorney, a social worker, a caregiver, and so on. We will have some, I believe, 7 breakout sessions on different topics, including the one you will be given that day. we will have a couple of interactive sessions, a dementia simulation experience. Extraordinary. I have done it a couple of times. It's an experience where you go in, they give you some minor equipment, I think goggles, headphones, and the headphones, you hear noises. With the goggles, you see things, with the idea that you may attempt to experience what it may be like for those affected by dementia, the confusion, the anxiety, the inability to do things that your mind knows you can, but somehow your hands can't follow. Anyway, and then the 5-pillar will be a panel discussion, where in this case, this year, will be on the caregiver experience. We will have some 4 or 5 caregivers caring for their loved ones, sharing their experience and their journey.
Thank you so much for sharing all that information. I'm sure that it's going to be a tremendous help for so many out there in the community. I want to make emphasis on something that you said earlier, and that is how you and perhaps your wife came across of this reality of these caregivers. It hits really close home because that's exactly how it happens to me. As I'm a nurse practitioner, prior doing family care, I come to neurology, and as I start getting these families, these patients come to visit, I immediately picked into that. Oh, wow, this is a disease that is very hard. Of course, it's very hard for the patient, but how incredibly difficult for the ones who are taking care of it, especially if they don't have the resource and the things that they need. And that's when I decided to go on an education, and because I see that's exactly what they need. Because as we all know, as of January of 2026, there's not a cure for dementia. And what we do in neurology is we offer symptomatic treatment. We basically treat the symptoms, but we don't have a cure. We have some medications out there that help in this. There's no cure, right? And there's some other experimental drugs and things. Hopefully, maybe not. We're getting close to, there's a lot of hope out there. But at the same time, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So you and I, we're part of that, that we want to bring not only awareness. Okay, there's the awareness. Now, what do we do when you have that diagnosis, right? And I think you mentioned a few things, but why don't we talk about, let's see, I hear so many caregivers say, wow, I knew something was wrong years ago, but no one listened, or they had a hint, but they didn't know what to do. What would you say to families who are carrying that doubt or that regret, that, oh, if only we would have done something earlier?
Very important, and I'm glad you touch on it, because we just mentioned earlier how much of a taboo this was until not too long ago. Something that even if you noticed something yourself, again, not too long ago, would just deny. Denial, it was and still is to some extent a good part of the problem. But now, as things change and as people are more open to talk about it, and therefore to think about it, about the possibility that they may be impacted, affected by someone you love next to you, by someone you love not that close, but nonetheless by a neighbor, by yourself. As we are more able to acknowledge that something may be happening, also the information available online. I mean, aside from the ability to go to a doctor, to somebody like you, to say, wait, well, the information that's out there online right now is such that someone with a doubt can start clearing that doubt early. Either you can rule it out, or you can start thinking, well, they're about describing what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing. And so that's what should prompt immediately the next step, which is going to a professional one and saying, it seems like these 4 things that I'm talking about, that I'm seeing, are common symptoms, early signs of what may turn into one type of dementia. I think that's important for people to accept and for people to know that those resources are out there for them to start checking individually, self-checking some things. I'm not a promoter of self prescription or self, because that's a lot
Right.
of what also online information ends up doing. But I am of the idea that at least sorting the information that's available should prompt someone to take that next step of going to a professional.
Because part of, for me as a professional, part for me of clearing and clarifying to patients and caregivers is not one patient with dementia looks like the other. Every case is so different. Everybody progresses different. There's so many. So when we try to put everything in a box and pretend that it all's gonna behave, dementia is it's like a roller coaster, and it is so personal to every individual. We know a few things. So that is so important. And also finding the resources and finding the support that is so much needed. And the other thing is caregiving can be so isolating. From what you see, what are some of the biggest emotional and practical challenges that caregivers are facing right now?
Wow. I mean, first, you can start at the very beginning, right? When the first signs are seen, are felt, what a thunder of emotions. Mm. But as things start progressing in that direction and action starts to be needed, you see caregivers that have to drop their own plans, their own goals, their own ambitions, their own life, really. Job, forget about vacations, careers, all those have to be set aside, hopefully put on standby or just dialed or toned down, but in many cases completely ruled out. And so there's not only that emotional toll on the caregivers, there also is a physical toll on the caregivers. Because in addition to the anxiety, there is the physical need of having to assist that loved one. Maybe not sleeping as well because you feel that you need to be alert. It is a tremendous toll. And you touched on a couple of things that are key. Support is one, isolation is another one, and they come together. It is not uncommon for caregivers caring for their loved ones just to remain at home for two reasons. Either there's an element of inability to go out, right? But there's also the other element of, I don't know if shame or that frustration is part of it. What do I go to my group of friends and what do I have to tell them? If not what I feel, what's really hurting me inside, which is this. I mean, can I, and there comes the support parts. And the support part is one that is interesting. It has been also very absent. The main reason I find out because it is hard to have a gathering of people who are caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's because they need to be with that loved one. It's not like they can
Right.
take the time to go and attend a meeting in a support group. I talked of 5 pillars of the Expo, and I forgot the sixth, which is not in the program and is not stated as part of it, but turned out over the years to be perhaps the most important one, which is that connection that happens among attendees who are experiencing the same journey, right? And we hope that is part of what they take back home after attending the expo. Not just the resources, not just the cards, not just the flyers of those entities that can be of help, but perhaps most importantly, relationships with others that are going through the same thing and with whom they can maybe meet or talk, even on the phone or get together for coffee and just say, is this happening to you too? Right? That I think it's important.
That is amazing. That is, you are so right. That is so important. Community,
Yes.
communication. Now, I was going to ask you, like, what do you think about caregivers? Why do they struggle to ask for help? But I'm going to share something with you. So I don't know what it's like in Bolivia growing up out there, but like growing up in Colombia, our culture is very family oriented as opposed
Mhm.
to a culture here in the US where people tend to be a lot more independent, you know? This is one of those diseases that it takes away the independence, not only of the person suffering the disease, but the person who's taking care of them. So I can only imagine how hard it is. And then at the same time, one of the things I see is caregivers a lot of time have a really hard time asking for help.
Mm.
because sometimes there's a taboo thinking that, well, we're supposed to do this thing. No, you're not supposed to do this alone. This is already very, very hard and heavy for someone to carry alone. So I don't know what your experience is, what I just said. Do you think d- does that
Definitely.
resonate with you?
Yes, definitely. And also because I believe there's an element of this in what you're saying, which is what type of help should I ask for? You know, unless you are experiencing the same thing, you won't be able to help me. Appears to be a common
Right.
assumption. And it's not a right assumption, but it
There is
happens,
it's
right?
correct.
And so, what can you help me? What help can I ask? And so, this is something that I heard in one of the panel discussions that I moderated at the Expo. To me, it was very enlightening. And it said, it was talking to those who may know someone who is the caregiver and saying, don't wait for help to be asked of you. Offer help. And don't offer help in the abstract terms of just call me if you need anything, because then we go to what we were talking about. You won't get that call, right? Offer to help with very basic, very practical, very habitual things. Can I come on Thursday to wash your dishes? Can I bring a cake? Can I do your groceries next Monday? I'm doing mine. Can I do yours? Can I come and stay with you and watch TV with you for 1 hour? Right? I mean, maybe just things that are like that, which don't appear to be the help that someone will ask for. And yet, when it's delivered, it opens up a space of relief. It opens up a space of community that you mentioned, and it goes a long, long way.
Totally. And this is why it's so important that we start talking openly about this disease,
Mhm.
both as families and as societies. And I'm so deeply thankful for having this conversation. This is very, very close to my heart. Now, another thing is, and again, I don't know how familiar, well, you mentioned something in the fact that sometimes we also, the ones that were like outside watching, for example, we wonder if people can ask, well, what I get asked, well, why are you trying to help? Are you a caregiver? Are you, well, I may not be a caregiver. Yes, I don't have somebody who's suffering from dementia. Well, in my clinical and what I see. So I try to do whatever I can in my position to offer that help. So in other words, don't let this, oh, well, you don't know nothing about it. Because I'll tell you
Exactly.
this, in this day and age, if you don't know something about something, all you need is to have the motivation, the desire, you learn it and you go out there and you help. You do everything you can in your power to be human, right? Now,
Very much so. Right?
so
And then
Eduardo,
one other thing is that many times, well, in this case, in this particular case of dementia and Alzheimer's, the help is to the caregiver, not to the person impacted,
exactly,
affected by it. That's what we need to think of. The caregiver needs help
exactly.
herself. We emphasize when talking to caregivers the importance of those caregivers taking care of their health, perhaps first. It,
Yes,
I mean, in spite of the fact that it is the other person, the one
absolutely.
affected by the disease, the one that is the patient, the one that is sick, the one that has the disease, it is the caregiver's health because that person is the rock on which the patient leans on. So this is the help. The caregiver's health is the one that needs to remain strong and needs to remain a rock. Sometimes
Yeah.
the caregivers forget about that and they are doing things in detriment of their own health out of love, for their loved ones.
And there's so much. I mean, there's also the social component. For me as a clinician, it hurts me a lot when I see the elderly couple. This has been my case that I have a patient, let's say in their 80s, come in for the diagnosis of dementia. Talk to them, and I look, wow, the partner may even also have dementia. And then
Mm.
who's taking care of you guys? And that's when I try to get in, where's your family? Try to get them the help that they need. It's tremendous. I realize that I feel like I go a little bit beyond because again, I'm not asked to do these things. This is something that I've taken upon me
Mm.
to like, because I see the need, right, for the education. My job, again, as a clinician is the diagnosis, the treatment, but uh, aside, I take the best I can. But also, I come from the medical background and the nursing part of caring for others. That caregiver in me says, hey, I want to do everything I can do in my power to help them to achieve the goal. And I am so familiar with what you just said. The caregiver needs a lot of help so they can be healthy to take care of this other person. And one last thing, unless is there is anything that I have not asked you that you want to share with the audience?
No, well, there are many, many things I won't think of
Right.
and one
Yes.
that we are still all, certainly I am, still in the discovering phase. So there's plenty of things now, and there will be always plenty of things that we can always talk about. But primarily, Rosabel, I commend you and I thank you for what you're doing, because that is what makes the difference. It is the combination of things like what you're doing that are going to move the needle in the right direction. It's already being moved, but it is what you're doing what is helping that needle go in the right direction. So
Thank
good
you.
for that.
Thank you. I look forward to continuing this journey. Like I said, it's probably just a little bit of the beginning for me. As I go and notice, like you say, go into these forums and to the different groups out there in social media, and I see the need for education, and I offer my time to answer their questions, everything I can do. And one last thing, and we talked a little bit about everything on this, but if there is one message that you hope the listeners take away from today's conversation, if there is nothing else, what would this message be?
Yeah. Thank you. And I'm going to give you two. What one for those who mm, for those who may be seeing the signs initially and aren't yet in that pool of people affected officially by the disease, and one for those who are, right? For those who aren't, alert. Be alert because this is a disease that unfortunately is growing. I can't think of anybody that doesn't have an experience, either a neighbor, a loved one, a cousin, a friend, somebody. It's there, it's out there, and we are seeing it more and more. To those, be alert. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to go on Google and put the word signs or early signs of Alzheimer's, early signs of dementia, and start, because not only will that help you see if you need to take that next step, but also, we don't need to be confused enough so that anything that our loved one does, you
Right,
the 85-year-old person has Alzheimer's, and yet they are forgetful. I am forgetful as it is right now. It doesn't mean that I'm not.
right.
And so, anyway,
Exactly.
be alert, inform, and for those who are there, seek help. Talk about it openly. Let everybody know where you are. It is not a taboo anymore. People will understand. Just be open about it and seek the help that others are wanting to give you, not knowing how. Help them know how and ask for it.
Absolutely. And before we go, I want to give you a little reflection here on Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's does not just affect memory, it also changes relationships, roles, and identity. And what has really stood out to me today is the power of community. The reminder that when we stop whispering about this disease, when we stop minimizing our instincts, and when we create spaces where caregivers feel seen, then healing begins to happen. So I just want to tell everybody out there that if you're walking this journey right now, you're not weak for needing help. You are not alone. So if today's episodes has resonated with you, I encourage you to connect with Eduardo and learn more about the work that he's doing through the Divine Home Care Services. I believe you can visit divinehomecareservices.com where you can explore home care support and learn more about the upcoming free Alzheimer's Expo that we have coming up in Belton, which is Central Texas. If you're looking for clear, compassionate dementia education, I also invite you to explore my dementia playlist on YouTube, where I walk you through stages, symptoms, medications, and caregiver realities in plain language. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. Until next time, I want you to keep choosing courage, keep choosing connection, and remember, this is Rosabel Unscripted with Courage Meets Healing. Thank you, Eduardo. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, Rosabel. Thank you.
Thank you.